Hello everyone, happy Sunday. Welcome back to our daily Close by Sam. We have another hard one today. It is the last day of May, and if you're new here, we play Close by Sam every day here on the channel. I do explain the logic as I am solving, and it's always my first time solving, so sometimes I don't get it right, but I do try to get there eventually, and you can follow along with me and maybe compare your logic to mine. I hopefully will help you if I get it right. And the link is in the description if you want to follow. I will start mine right away and let's see how this goes. We start with Petra telling us that both criminals below this person are connected. Okay, so Petra herself is below this person, which means that if there has to be two criminals below her, it has to be two people who are connected. There's only Hope and Luigi who could be those two, right? So Hope and Luigi both are criminals. And now we also know that Vance is not one, so we don't need Petra's clue anymore. We click on it and we get 3 new clues. Hope says that only one of the 3 criminals below Dennis is Sia's neighbor. So below Dennis, there's 4 people, 2 of them neighbor Sia, and only one of those 2 is a criminal. And there has to be 3 total who are criminals, right? So of the 2 people left, both of them have to be criminals, so we can have a total of 3. Now we get 2 new clues. We don't need Hope's clue anymore because we tagged these people here. Luigi says there's an odd number of incense on the edges. Okay, we're gonna keep that there because it's gonna be useful in the future. Vance says there's exactly 2 incense in column A. Okay, we don't have anybody in column A yet revealed, so we also are gonna use that clue in the future. Ike says there's an odd number of criminals in row 1. Okay, again, odd numbers. Martin says there are more incense in column A than column C. We know there's 2 incense in column C. No, we know there's 2 incense in column A, right? Which means that in column C there couldn't have any more than 1. Because of course, more than. How am I gonna say this? Of course, there couldn't be any other numbers that are less than 2, which is what we have in column A. So that means that since we have 1 innocent already here in column C, that makes Dennis not an innocent because that will break through our minimum or our maximum if we look at the most innocents we could have. This is already a mess today, so Dennis is a criminal. Hope you're following. If you're not, I'm sorry. But now we know that Martin's clue is not needed anymore. And then it says that all criminals in column A are connected. So you know there's 2 instances in column A, which means there's 3 criminals, right? Because there's a total of 5 people in that column. What does that do for us? If all 3 have to be connected, that's gonna go interestingly. Who has to be a criminal? In column A, it's Keith, right? Because there's gonna be 3. Could there be 3 like this? No, there couldn't because they wouldn't be all connected. Could there be 3 like this? No, they couldn't because they wouldn't be connected. And of course, it couldn't happen with there being like a person out in a corner left. Like this wouldn't even make any sense. So having 3, we know that Keith has to be a part of those 3 so that all of them can be connected. That was easier to think than to demonstrate. Keith now says there's an odd number of instances neighboring Sia. So we know that Sia has 1 instant here in column C and only 1 more neighbor, Stella. Stella couldn't be an instant then because that would leave Sia with 2 instances and that's an even number, so Stella is a criminal. Yeah, just double checking that we're talking about instance. Stella now says that Hope is the only one with exactly 7 criminal neighbors. So where's Hope? Hope so far has 5 criminal neighbors, sorry. I was counting 3 here and 3 here, but Martin is a part of columns and rows. So we have 5 criminals neighboring Hope so far, and we're gonna have 2 more. Those 2 could be Floyd and Bruce, because that would not violate the rule that in column A, all criminals have to be connected. They could be Floyd and this person here, because that wouldn't violate the rule that every criminal in column A has to be connected, but they couldn't be Bruce and that person, because now if Floyd is an innocent, he's separating the criminals in column A. So we know that for sure Floyd has to be one of the criminals that neighbors Hope. And in row 1, there's 1 innocent neighboring Hope, so these 2 people left are innocents. So we don't need, we do need Stella's clue because it talks about other people. Like nobody else in the board is gonna have 7 criminal neighbors. And Ike so far is at risk of having 7, as is Luigi. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. Floyd says that only 1 criminal in row 4 has an innocent directly below them. Okay. In row 4, we have 1 criminal so far. But we could have a second one who's Kita, and then Kita would have an innocent below her. But what else has an influence in that? Because we know that there's an odd number of criminals in row 1, and at the moment there's 2. There's Dennis, who is in row 1 and is a criminal, and we're gonna have a second criminal here. We couldn't have Eric being innocent, because now we will be left with 2 criminals total in row 1, and that's not an odd number. So we need Eric to be a criminal. And we now know that there's 3 criminals in row 1. We know that there's an odd number of innocents on the edges, so we gotta think about that somehow. We don't need Ike's clue anymore. And we know, like, could we make this is a hard one after all, so I'm not surprised that it is hard to solve, but not really sure where to look next, which is something that could have happened yesterday and I mentioned it. So let's think about this again. If we make both Olive and Uma innocents, that would force Bruce to be a criminal, which would force this person to be an innocent. Now, there are still 2 people who could be the single criminal in row 4 with an innocent right below them. Who's talking about that? Stella herself. Nope. Oh, since we know that all criminals in column A are connected, we know that Uma couldn't be a criminal. There's no way for her to be a criminal because she would be the last criminal in column A, and she would be separate from the other 2. So Uma is for sure an innocent. We know now that Olive and Bruce are opposites, which I don't think that gives us any real help at the moment, but let's leave that there. Uma says there are more innocents in row 1 than row 2, so that's good, because we know that row 1 has 1 innocent only. There couldn't be any innocents in row 2, so the last person left in that row is a criminal. We don't need her clue because it's not a clue, but we don't need Uma's clue anymore either. And now we look at the people who are innocents on the edges, because let's think about Uh, we can think about Ike. Because Ike has 8 neighbors and he's at risk, like I said before, of having one innocent only. But that would clash with Stella's clue that says that Hope is the only one with one innocent only. So we couldn't have B1 and Nancy be opposites. They have to either be the same, and if they are the same, what happens with the edges? Because that will make it so that we have opposites here with Wanda and Sia, and that will give us one innocent. Alright. One innocent plus Nancy, Olive, and B1 will be 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's an even number, which couldn't happen. Luigi says there's an odd number of innocents on the edges. Why are Wanda and Sia opposites in this situation? If any of them is an innocent, they are gonna be the single innocent below a criminal in that row. So they would force the other person to be a criminal, right? So that we avoid the double criminals with innocents below them. If, on the other hand, Nancy and B1 are criminals, that would make Olive the single criminal in row 4 with an innocent below her. So we would need everybody else here in row 5 to be a criminal. And we would end up with only one innocent on the edge, or 3 innocents on the edges actually. Did I ignore Uma and Vince completely before? They're a pair, so they would make it an even number either way. So I'm not really worried about that. But right now, the pair plus Bruce gives us an odd number, so that would work. But that would work. And they can't be opposites. B1 and Nancy. They can't be opposites and they can't both be innocents. Because of the thing that I just mentioned. That I'm gonna redo because I need to make sure that I didn't ignore the issue, guys. Although I'm pretty confident in my math. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So we know that Nancy and B1 are criminals. I'm not saying this name. I'm sorry. I'm not really confident in that. Now we know that Bruce is an innocent. That makes Olive a criminal. And now the scenario is that Olive is for sure the single criminal with an innocent below her in row 4. So we couldn't have Stella have an innocent below her. That makes Sia a criminal. And we couldn't have Kita have an innocent below her. So that makes her an innocent. And we are done the puzzle. That was really quick. It was absolutely tricky to think about those two. And it sort of forces you to have a lot of people being tracked in your head. Like, for example, I was lucky that those two innocents on the edges there were a pair. And that didn't really have an influence in my equation there. to see if we were having an odd number or an even number. But one more thing that could have happened there was that, which I thought was gonna happen when I made both people criminals, was us seeing somebody else who has 8 neighbors being a possible person with one innocent only neighbor in them. And that will make it so that we would sort of find somebody else to look at, but it wasn't the case. I actually found the solution straight away, so that was nice. I hope you could follow along. If you have any questions, by all means, leave it down below. I will try to make it clearer as I explain, but I did try to explain the logic between Sia and that other person here in row 5. So I'll see you tomorrow for Double Monday, more Clues by Sam. Bye bye.